Can you hear that voice? So creepy. Okay, here we go. Good morning, Malvika. Thank you so much for joining me and agreeing for being our Share of the Month. We are very grateful to have you here, especially because I know you were not feeling very well. So I appreciate you giving us the time this morning.
I'm really excited, given I know who your previous sharers have been, so I feel like I'm definitely in good company.
I mean, we are so happy to have you as our sharer for September 2021. And I always start with a small introduction. I want to let you know that I'm just going to ask 20 questions, and you're going to have an incredibly short amount of time to answer these 20 questions. It's a bit ridiculous, but if there is a question that you want to take more time on, please just let me know. We'll do it. Like, we're always here to make more time. So if you're ready, I'll just get started with the questions.
Of course.
Okay, brilliant. So we always start with asking, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. As you just heard there, I've been a bit poorly for the last couple of weeks. So I've had a head cold and I've just been, doing the absolute bare minimum to get by. So today was the first day that I woke up and felt a little bit more like myself. So I'm feeling good today.
Brilliant. So again, thank you so much for doing this while not feeling fantastic and having loads of work. We really appreciate it. On a positive note, let's start like completely all on a positive note already. What's one thing that it's kind of exciting in your life that is going on in your life right now? Let me know.
So I'm really excited at the moment because I've just finished the manuscript for a book that I'm co-authoring with a friend of mine on domestic abuse in private law children proceedings. So that was a slog and it should be out later this year, but it's a really contentious, interesting, developing area of law, which I'm really interested in. And I'm so excited to see my work in print because I love reading. I have books all over my house. So to be able to create something that I can put on my shelf is super exciting.
Is that a dream come true?
It is a bit of a dream come true.
Well, that's honestly, that's amazing. That's something that a lot of people will just be reading and looking at, and I'm sure your work will be so invaluable. I wanted to ask if you have, I don't know if you kind of come across these situations, but sometimes there is something that someone says that is just, it stays with you. And I just wanted to know whether, what's something that someone told you that left a lasting impression on you?
It's not something someone said to me, but a book that I've just finished reading is called Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin. And one of the things that she says in that is, most decisions don't require extensive research. And that really stuck with me because I'm really not a particularly impulsive person. I need about 14 people's opinions before I do anything. So I'm going to try not to extensively research every decision in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, overthinker here as well, on anything like meals, like what to put in a bag. I'm one of those people as well. You know, they have a podcast too, actually. It's yeah, and they she's brilliant. She was on a couple of other podcasts that I really love. So I love it, and I love that it's not something that was said to you necessarily, but it really feels quite personal, doesn't it, sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, the Happiness Project is such a great book. There are lots of little tidbits like that that I will write down and try and follow. Whether I do follow it is an entirely different matter, but I'll try.
Trying, that's important, right? So do you have a secret talent?
My ability to nap through almost anything.
Okay, give me the weirdest place or moment that you've napped.
I don't know. I didn't realize that it was much of a talent until other people, told me that they can't sleep when it's light in the room. They can't sleep when there's lots of noise in the background. I live in a very noisy household. I still live at home with my parents. Everyone watches TV until about 2 a.m. If you don't get used to it, then you'll never sleep. My mum's alarm starts ringing at about 5 a.m. and it doesn't stop ringing because she just doesn't wake up. She sleeps right through it. So I've got used to being in a noisy Indian household and I can sleep through anything.
Can you sleep on like tubes? I often see people sleeping on tubes and trains and I'm so impressed. I wish I could do that.
On trains, I actually can't stay awake in a moving vehicle. So the question is, can you not sleep on a train or a tube?
Do you always wake up at the right time or do you miss your stops?
I haven't had any mishaps just yet. I have a very, very good instinct for when I'm coming near home and when there'll be another bed waiting for me.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. That is a really good talent to have, especially with such a busy career and life like you do.
I think because I have to travel so much and that requires getting up really early and I have to catch up with my sleep somewhere. So it's a useful talent to have. I don't want to make anyone jealous, but it is helpful.
I'm definitely jealous. So I absolutely would love that. And I'm going to move on to like a little less positive, but I really do think it's important that we like go into obviously all the work that you do with mental health as well. And I'm going to start by just asking a bit of a personal question. What's the hardest challenge that you've ever had to overcome in your life?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I do a lot of work around mental health, and that's because that's a very personal experience for me. From about my second year at university, I started struggling with extremely paranoid anxiety. I would fixate on things that normal people just would not fixate on, and that would completely consume my thinking, and I'd be unable to do pretty much anything. I'd only want to sleep because that was the only time that my brain was quiet and when I wasn't worrying about something. And I need constant reassurance from other people that the things I was worrying about is not something that I needed to worry about. And I'd wake up just dreading the day ahead, catastrophizing everything that could possibly happen to me. And I just felt this sense of injustice. Why can't I just be like everyone else? Why can't I be happy? Why can't I think like everyone else? And that carried on for years. And I don't think I really sought any proper professional support for about 5 or 6 years. And that's when I properly committed. I was prescribed medication. I committed to therapy. And I had a very big mental health crisis a couple of years ago during my pupillage year, which I'm very open about. And that was a really dark place to emerge from, during the aftermath of, the month aftermath. I barely got out of bed. I really didn't have the motivation to do anything. So I'm very far away from that place now. I wouldn't say that I've overcome mental ill health. I think I've accepted that that's something I'm going to have to struggle with for the rest of my life to varying degrees. Mm-hmm. But I've developed coping mechanisms to be able to respond to those dark periods. And I have far more happy days than I have bad days. And by and large, I really like my life, which 2 years ago is a mental headspace that felt so far away. Mm-hmm. So it's not a challenge I've overcome. It's probably one that I will continue to manage.
Mm-hmm. And work on. Mm-hmm. I was actually assisting a friend, and my next question is about the pandemic. And during the pandemic, loads of people have been struggling with mental health. Even though already before there were many people, I think during the pandemic even more. And not that long ago, I was trying to help a friend to find support for therapy, which wasn't easy at all. And I remember going through this list of private therapists and just kind of looking at whoever was saying challenge or overcome. And I was just like, nope. I think I've done therapy myself. So I know that the entire process is not about changing yourself. It's not about overcoming, kind of becoming this new, fresh person. It's about kind of making sure that you accept those parts of you and you kind of take them by hand and walk with them instead of just kicking them away.
Yeah, I think when I started my mental health journey, I had those unrealistic expectations that I'm sure lots of people have, which is I'm going to go to the doctor and they'll fix me. Mm-hmm. And I think having to accept that this might be who I am now, mm-hmm. because I kept thinking, why can't I just be 17 again? I never used to think about this stuff. My life was so different. Mm-hmm. But yearning after a time that just doesn't exist anymore is a pointless exercise. And I think just learning that this is me now, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not what I wanted, but that's okay. That was a big shift in my thinking.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And I'm going to ask about the pandemic now, because I just wondered, how has it been this last, I keep thinking a year, but it's actually longer than a year. It's a year and a half now. And I know you're a junior barrister, and I know that has been quite a lot of kind of work. There have been loads of issues, I know, with other friends that are junior barristers at the bar. So during the pandemic, especially. So how's that been for you?
I mean, it's very weird. I became a tenant about 4 months before the pandemic started. So I'd barely been a barrister before we went into lockdown. And I think I often feel like I'm missing out on all the things that make the bar. So the camaraderie of being able to wander into chambers, wander around court, and not just seeing other lawyers, but just seeing the court staff and security who I used to see day in, day out, and being able to sit in chambers and just learn from osmosis, because obviously I'm self-employed, I don't have a team. I rely on being around other people, putting myself in those situations so that I can learn them by just being around them. Also doing so much remote advocacy, and I still do a lot more remote advocacy than I do in-person hearings at the moment. I am going into court more and more, but still the bulk of it is on Teams. I mean, remote advocacy isn't what drew me to the bar. That's not what I had in mind when I wanted to be a barrister, when I wanted to be an advocate. I wanted to be in court with the formality of court, looking at the bench, looking at the judge in the eye, and not on a pixelated screen apologizing constantly because I forgot to take myself off mute. That's not what being a barrister is to me. And I got into this job to look clients in the eye at the most distressing periods of their lives. And now I have to speak to them over the phone and talk to them about the prospect of, you know, a child being removed or the most sensitive aspects of their personal lives. So I do feel like what I'm doing right now doesn't feel like barristering. And I still feel a little bit like I'm not a barrister.
You still feel like a baby barrister in some way, or do you feel like it's something completely different?
It feels different. I feel like a poor substitute for a barrister sometimes. I feel like remote justice, well, I think it's definitely here to stay. And I think it makes sense to stay for lots of things like directions hearings, where you shouldn't have to travel a couple of hours to be in court for 10 minutes. I don't think you can replicate the human contact of this job. I think that's what makes being a family barrister. So sometimes I just feel like I'm not really, you know, being a barrister. I'm being something that's a poor substitute for it.
I imagine you work with a lot of vulnerable clients as well because of family law, so that must be really tough.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's particularly important. I mean, in some areas of law, perhaps it wouldn't feel as important to be able to go to court, speak to your client, look at them over a table, reassure them, comfort them. But I think being a family barrister is a job that almost wraps up being a lawyer with being a therapist and a social worker and a psychologist. And you need that degree of human interaction to do your job really well. The client care side of being a family barrister is a really big part of being a family barrister. And that is always going to be, the ability to offer really good client care is always going to be diminished over a screen or over a phone.
With poor connection and everything else that comes with it, yeah. So what's the thing that you miss the most about life pre-pandemic?
I'm feeling uncomfortable about human contact. I think taking for granted being able to shake someone's hand when I go to court to introduce myself, or hug a friend comfortingly. Even I wouldn't even complain about being standing room only on a train where we're all just crammed against each other, the commuter train from Leicester to Birmingham. I think I now cringe a little whenever anyone comes near me, and I can't think of a time when I won't be like that. And it's so funny to think how we took that for granted, just the ability to be physically near people.
Yeah, I find it really funny. I keep having being really confused about sometimes people just giving me their arms, like people just go with their elbows, and I find that really funny. But you go with it because they're doing it, so you find yourself doing this weird dance.
I mean, the number of times I've reached my hand out to shake and then I go, oh, sorry, forget about that. Don't do that. Don't touch me.
Oh my gosh, people must think that you're like kind of it's a joke on your side as well a little bit. So going back to all the work that you've been doing with or on mental health rather, you've been working on several projects. I'm just thinking Stiff Upper Lip as an example. And a lot of these projects are kind of focusing on mental health at the bar specifically. So what would you hope that people or institutions, organizations kind of take away from all the work that you're doing?
I suppose the understanding that more of us struggle than we care to admit. So when I started talking openly about my mental health and tweeting about it and writing about it, when I started my blog, I got so many messages of support from so many people of all different walks of life, different levels of seniority. And I was blown away because these are often people who I thought had it all together, had their lives together, which is totally untouchable. And I would never have imagined that they were struggling with something similar to what I had been struggling with. And I think it goes to show what fantastic actors lawyers are, that they're able to perform or portray this facade of emotional invulnerability that is just so far from the reality on the ground. And I hope that my work, my talks, my blogging, my writing, my tweeting makes others realize that more of us are struggling than we know, more of us are struggling than we realize. And many people think the things we do and feel the things we feel. Because what I found really isolating when I first started struggling with my mental health was, why can't I just be like everyone else? Everyone else is so happy. But that's not the case. And by talking about it, we destigmatize the issue. We encourage people to talk and go, oh, actually, I feel that way too. And then to offer each other solidarity and support, because they realize that they're not the only one suffering from it.
Yeah, it's like, why is everyone else dealing with this in such a way, and I can't do that? I have that often, and it makes me doubt my capacities as well, maybe. And I see many people kind of thinking about becoming a barrister. So often they think, oh, I would never be able to do that because I have this issue, or I struggle with this thing, where I can never kind of go crazy hours without sleep, food, and still be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's incredibly important what you're doing. And again, discussing the pandemic and how this has affected kind of everyone. What would you say to someone that is kind of struggling and maybe wanting some advice?
I think don't be afraid to seek professional support if you need it. Sometimes you might just be going through a rough patch, which can be managed by eating healthy and exercising and whatever they tell us on these well-being blogs and things to do. But if you are persistently struggling with your mental health, then go to your GP and explore your options. You might not take up any of those options, but at least knowing that they're there would be some form of comfort or reassurance. It certainly was for me. I think don't just think that this is the sort of thing that will go away if you just ignore it long enough. If you had a physical injury, you wouldn't do that. You would address the cause of the issue. And I kick myself that it took me so long to seek proper support, that I didn't want something in my medical records saying anxiety or depression. I don't know who I thought would read my medical records and use it against me. Well, that was the paranoid anxiety talking, but I didn't want this label. I didn't want to medicalize what I thought was just me feeling sad, me feeling low. But once I found something that worked for me, it completely transformed my life. It allowed me to start living again. So I'm really annoyed at myself for not seeking professional support earlier.
But you did, which is already amazing. I mean, I know so many people that don't. It's a really hard kind of first step. It's maybe the hardest of the steps. And I don't know if you manage to have any me time at all because you're so busy all the time, but if you do, what does kind of me time look like for you?
Sitting in bed, not having showered, watching Netflix with my cat at my feet and a Deliveroo Subway.
Fantastic. Is that like an all day thing?
An all day thing. I can watch an entire 8-episode series in a day and I feel no regret about it whatsoever.
I think I know, but what series was it?
Sex Education.
I knew it. I just binged it, but over 3 evenings. So
I watched the whole thing in a day. I have no self-control whatsoever.
It is a brilliant series, I think, and we're talking about therapy, etc. It's a little bit different type of therapy, but I mean, she's just brilliant and is a great portrait of therapy as well. So yeah, binge that too. That sounds like a lovely me time. May I just say that?
What does your me time look like?
Very similar, I think. I just got a puppy not that long ago. I mean, I keep saying just, it's maybe like 6 months ago, but I think it's just us cuddling. My partner can be there, doesn't have to be there. It's mostly me and the puppy, just having a great time together, chilling. And probably, yeah, also just watching. It's like my definition of Netflix and chill is just like chilling with a dog and watching Netflix. And I guess you with a cat.
Yeah, I mean, my cat isn't particularly cuddly. She offers affection on her own terms. So it's usually just us sitting next to each other, ignoring each other, but that works just fine for me.
The presence is there, like you just know that she's there. And I wonder, again, you being such an inspiring human being, I kind of wonder, who do you think is the most inspiring human being alive?
I think I can't possibly pick one person, because you find different people inspiring at different stages in your life. I think I'm consistently wowed by my fellow core group members on the Transparency Project. So the Transparency Project is a charity that I work with that aims to make family justice clearer for the general public. And the committee, who includes some amazing people, Lucy Reed, who's another barrister, Louise Tickle is a journalist, Dr. Julie Doughty, Paul McGrath, Alice Twait, Polly Morgan, Jack Harrison, they're all so cool. I mean, they are a lot more experienced than me. They've been in family law for a lot longer than I do, and they do so much around their day jobs because they are so committed to improving the system, and they are driven by this genuine wish to make things better for clients. And they go above and beyond to help each other do that, and they go above and beyond to help me, and that really motivates me to be a lot better as well. My co-host on my podcast, Maddie, she's pretty bloody inspiring. I sometimes just listen to her talk and I think, wow, you're so cool. I'm so obsessed with you. I'm so glad I get to spend all this time talking to you, and we get to record it, and then I get to show people how cool you are. But she really cares about the world around her, really cares about working in legal aid, really cares about her clients, and that's really inspiring to be around. And I think it's a bit salty, but my mum works a full-time job, has a really chaotic, high maintenance family with all sorts of problems, has a really needy grandchild and a really needy grand cat. She has a fashion blog. She has this insane commitment to fitness. She's constantly at the gym. I don't know where she finds the time to do everything. And I can't possibly do all the things that she does. She constantly prioritizes other people over herself. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, and she definitely shouldn't be doing that as much as she does, but just her capacity to be able to do all of that's pretty awe-inspiring.
That sounds extremely inspiring. And I think you already answered this a little bit, but my next question was about your new podcast, or recent podcast, and it's Professionally Embarrassing. And I just really wanted to know why you started it. I think you have already given a couple of reasons, but
my obsession with Madeline Whelan. That's not the reason. I mean, Maddie and I listened to so many other podcasts, and I think in that slightly overconfident 20-something way, we thought, hey, we could do that so much better. And we love talking about law, we love thinking about law, how the law should be, moaning to each other about the law. And we thought, well, why not just make a podcast that's a mix of not just law, but also the social and political issues that we find really interesting. And we wanted to do something a bit bolder than just talk about law. We wanted to talk about the deeper systemic problems that pervade the family justice system. And the name came obviously not just from the pun, but we just found it super embarrassing to start the podcast. We just thought that everyone is going to make fun of us, and that they're going to whisper about us in the corners of chambers. And you know what, life is often a case of just putting aside the embarrassment and doing it anyway. And I'm really, really proud of what we've done with the podcast. We finished series 1. We're recording the first episode of series 2 today. And it's been nominated for a Family Law Award for Family Law Commentator of the Year. Vote for us if you get a chance. Viewers of this video.
We'll put the link on how to vote as well in the post. Absolutely, that's massive.
Yeah, I know, it's so amazing, the people that were nominated alongside, that were shortlisted alongside. And this is a podcast that we put together in our spare time with the help of our long-suffering editor, who constantly is chasing us to get things done faster and to not just leave it till the last minute, but that's never going to happen. And it's such a labor of love. It's such a passion project. We don't do it because we want accolades or because we think we're going to get anything out of it. We don't get money out of it or anything like that. And it takes hours and hours of research and work, but it doesn't feel like work at all.
I think often people don't realize how much work goes behind a podcast episode. Yeah. Just one episode is so much research, but yeah, you clearly love the topic and love the woman, so it's worth it.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to not send the link to this video to Maddie, because she's gonna think I'm just unhealthily obsessed with her.
No, I think you should. I was literally listening to this. One of my favorite podcasts is called Ladies We Need to Talk. It's an Australian podcast, and their a recent episode is about friendship love, and it's just women kind of writing love letters to each other about their friendships. So I think you should send it with a little love letter. It sounds lovely. So we'll put the link to the podcast as well and how to vote. Absolutely. We often do that. So if there is anything else you want us to kind of put on the post and in the description of the episode, please let me know. And my next question is about always like women and like love and understanding and learning from each other. So what's the biggest lesson that you've ever learned from another woman?
I don't know if it's the biggest or if it's from only one woman, but I think it's an important one. And it sounds negative, but it's not really. But be ready to call time on certain friendships. I think your social circle is such an important source of support for you, but some friendships and some relationships are valuable for a certain period of time and then you outgrow them. And that doesn't make them any less worthwhile, but your life is going in a different direction and your energy is better directed elsewhere. So I think you shouldn't feel obliged to maintain certain friendships if they are not making you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, toxic friendships are a thing. And we're almost done. I'm just going to ask my last questions. These are kind of questions that we ask everyone, every year coming and chatting with me, just because we would love to kind of collect all of these amazing thoughts from amazing people, such as yourself. So the first one is, what do you think is the hardest part of being an intersectional woman working at the bar?
I mean, I don't know if I'm very good at being intersectional all the time. I'm sure that I fall short. So it's very kind of you to call me an intersectional feminist at the bar, or whatever you just called me. But I suppose putting my head above the parapet, I know that there are certain corners of the bar who are very old school and who disapprove of all this social media stuff, of people talking about their feelings and their anxiety and their mental health on Twitter, and that time they try to kill themselves, and they probably think it's attention seeking and that I should just stick to the law. But it's, you know, it's hard not to feel paranoid about that. It's hard not to feel that, am I putting people's backs up? Am I not going to get briefs? Are people not going to like me? Are people judging me for being vocal about my politics, my beliefs? But ultimately, I think the payoff is far greater than those worries or those anxieties. I mean, we don't exist in a vacuum at the bar as lawyers. I think we have a responsibility to our colleagues and our clients to put our head above the parapet and to talk about issues that matter, because otherwise we don't make progress. And the way things have always been done then becomes the way that things will always be done.
Yeah, we see that every day, everywhere. What's the best part of being an intersectional woman at the bar? And you are intersectional, I promise you. You're an intersectional inspiration for all of us.
Thank you, that's very kind. I'm going to keep replaying this video in my spare time when I need to think over this. But I suppose getting a message from someone who's really benefited from my work, from my blogging, from my writing. I've gotten cards, I've gotten messages on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, and I save them all. They matter a lot to me, and I reread them constantly whenever I feel a little bit low. But just feeling that someone felt a little bit less alone because of something that I said or wrote, that means a lot.
You can add this video to it, absolutely. To your collection. I love that. That's such an important thing to do, and I feel like we often don't do it. If it's nice, we just like keep it, like we throw it away. And sometimes like harsh things that have been said to us, and we just keep them a lot closer than nicer things.
And my friend Emma Trevitt got me onto this thing that she did called a nice things folder. So I have in my work inbox, I have a nice things folder, and we don't often, you know, being a self-employed barrister, I don't get someone telling me I'm doing a really good job all the time, but occasionally I'll get a really nice email from a solicitor or a client, and I just add it to my nice things folder and then look back on it when I'm feeling like I'm not a very good barrister.
That's such a lovely idea. I feel like I'm gonna start doing that now. What's the most pressing issue at the bar? Like, this is general, very general, big question, but what do you think is the most pressing issue at the bar nowadays?
There are so many. I mean, I'm going to be a bit cheeky. I'm going to narrow it down for my own interest, because I think otherwise I'm going to struggle, because I don't want to speak to other people's experiences. But for the family bar specifically, I mean, it's hard to isolate one issue, but I definitely think chronic underfunding over many, many years. I mean, the system is so profoundly broken. Where do you even begin? And, you know, there's a lack of judges because it's not that attractive to be an overworked, underpaid district judge with a massive list. There's a lack of court buildings because court buildings were getting shut down way before the pandemic, way before the backlogs that were prompted or exacerbated by the onset of the pandemic. There's a lack of lawyers in legal aid because they don't find legal aid work appealing enough, certainly not after the financial investment it often takes to get to the point of being a barrister. And there's so many clients representing themselves in private family law because they aren't eligible for legal aid anymore because LASPO completely decimated access to justice in private family law. So that created a total false economy that was based on a total false economy because we spend so much time in court explaining to people who are not represented what it is that they're supposed to be doing or what they've not complied with, or judges explaining to them what the law is. It's just chaos in my job right now. And I do struggle with low morale quite a lot as a family barrister. I love my job. And what really drew me to it is the added value I saw every day from being a family barrister. But how do you explain to a client that it's going to take, in Birmingham right now, 26 weeks potentially to get a report? And until the report's done, there's no consideration of them being able to see their child. How do you explain to a client that the trial that they've waited months and months to go ahead can't go ahead because there are no judges? I mean, it sounds like a joke, but the number of times I get an email going, sorry, it's not going ahead because there are no judges. How can there be no judges? But yeah, the system is so profoundly broken, and it can only be addressed by more extensive funding.
And if you, again, I'm asking you those questions that are, you're never going to find the one answer, but I'm asking for exactly one answer. If you could change one thing in family law, so this is very specific to kind of what you do, your field of expertise, what would you do?
What would I change in family law? I mean, I suppose given the work I do with the Transparency Project, one of the things I would love to see is greater transparency in the family courts. We have such a reputation for secrecy and very big decisions being made by the state behind a screen of secrecy. And that, to a large extent, that is true. And I think the laws that are in place that prevent information from being communicated out of the family courts are extremely antiquated and urgent need of reform. So I would love to see a system that is more transparent, which then engenders greater trust in the system, because the system only works if people trust it. And right now, I don't think that there is a great deal of trust in the family justice system.
Thank you. Thank you for finding this really kind of answers to massive questions. I really appreciate that. So do you, I think I know the answer to this. I always ask this question. I always know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think intersectionality and feminism are important? Do you think the bar kind of needs them?
I'd love to see who answers no.
Yeah, interviewing with me.
Yeah, just to throw a spanner in the works. I feel like, no, of course it is. Why am I even doing this interview? Why does this organization exist? Yes, I think that the bar needs feminism. I think the bar needs intersectional feminism, as you say. It does not need more white middle class feminism. I think it needs feminism that incorporates the wide range of experience, which the history of feminism has shown us is often not the case. And without that, the bar is not going to look like the communities that we serve. It will reflect and prop up societal prejudices, and it will serve the interests of only a select few.
Yeah, I'm waiting for someone to say no to me and then see kind of the rage going on, the Hulk coming out. So last two questions, and these are more kind of just free, and if you have anything, throw it at me. If you don't, that's absolutely fine. But I always ask if you have a favorite song, movie, book, article, podcast, anything that you like to plug.
Gosh, I have loads because I read voraciously. That's my way of decompressing at the end of the day, and I watch so many films and read so many books, I can't possibly narrow it down. I mean, things that have really stuck with me recently, there's a book called Careless by Kirsty Capes that I've been plugging on Twitter, and I plugged on my podcast, and it's a novel from the point of view of a child in care. And I think what really interested me about it is, obviously, as a family barrister who works in care proceedings, I think I become very desensitized to the cases because I deal with so many of them. And I forget about the children at the center of it all. And there's a level of distance from what I do and their lived experiences of the care system. And that novel definitely brought back to me that there are kids in the care system who are struggling with their sense of identity, with their sense of belonging in ways that I will never, ever fully understand. So I think that was a helpful reminder of why I do the work that I do, and not to forget the end goal and the people at the center of it. I've also really enjoyed The End of Men. Have you read that, by Christina Sweeney Baird? I think she's a lawyer. I want to say she's a solicitor. I could have just made that up, but it's about a virus, and it's a very timely book that wipes out most of the world's men. And it explores how women, largely women, would adapt to this new world order where there are no men. And it's things as simple as how do we deal with a workforce? How do we deal with rebuilding a workforce in industries that are largely dominated by men? Or what would politics and revolution and diplomacy look like if women were leading it? And it's also terrifying to read in a pandemic. The first couple of chapters really creeped me out because it's about an A&E doctor in Edinburgh who sees something happening, who sees people getting sick and dying around her. And that felt really close to home given what's happening in the world right now. And at the minute I'm reading, I don't read a lot of nonfiction, but my boyfriend does, and he's been forcing me to read more nonfiction and to branch out. And he's been raving about this book, and it's called The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. And I think what's often missing from feminism, social activism that's centered on gender is economics, is an economic analysis and the impact of neoliberalism and of capitalism on compounding poverty and inequality. And we look at abuses against women in these sort of compartmentalized ways without considering the wider context. So I've been trying to correct that gap in my own knowledge. And what the shock doctrine is about is Naomi Klein argues that in moments of crisis or upheaval, like war, coups, natural disasters, those moments are exploited when people are disorientated, when they are in shock, to push through oppressive corporatist economic policies. It's a very, very bold, very interesting book, and I'm absolutely gripped by it, even though it's not something I would normally read at all. So I definitely recommend that.
So your favorite genre is definitely nonfiction?
No, my favorite genre is fiction by far. So End of Men is fiction, obviously. Careless is fiction. So I'm trying actively to read more nonfiction, hence Gretchen Rubin, hence Naomi Klein. I find that I want to read to get away from life, not to read more about life. But I think that I'm missing out on some really great literature by taking that slightly narrow-minded view. So I'm trying to correct that gap.
Yeah, it's good to mix it up. I have my partner that only reads nonfiction, and I actually quite like mixing it up. So I am slightly like just sliding something on the table for him every now and then. Yeah. So final questions for today. What would you like to see Themis working on? This could be topic, project, anything. Just throw it at me.
Yeah, I think what I feel quite strongly about. Sorry, my mum's just walked in. Mum, I told you not to come in. I'm doing a very important interview. I think harassment and bullying amongst junior lawyers, I mean, it happens a lot. I hear it from my friends a lot anecdotally, and no one talks about it for obvious reasons, because certainly at the bar, it's such a small profession where no one wants to get a reputation for being a troublemaker. And it creates this dangerous imbalance of power where seniors can get away with treating juniors, particularly pupils, in a way that's totally unacceptable. And for all that we're so highly regulated as a profession, barristers, pupillage is highly unregulated, and it definitely needs more oversight and accountability, because I don't want really great barristers to feel pushed out of the profession. I want them to be in a chambers like mine where the pupils are so highly supported.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for again doing this, especially when you're just now feeling a little bit better. I really appreciate you taking the time and being with me quite early in the morning as well. You're recording
I'm sorry about that. I have so many things to do today that this is the only time I could do.
No, it's actually, it works really well for me. I'm training to wake up really early in the morning, so it was okay for me, but I was just worried that I was kind of just really forcing you to wake up quite early, and you're recording your podcast today, so as well, so loads of things going on, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me. I've had so much fun, and it's an opportunity to talk about so many things that I love talking about anyway.
And we'll definitely put the links of everything that you've mentioned, all the books and all of your podcasts and voting as well. That's brilliant. Congratulations for that again. And yeah, thank you again. And I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, Mon.